עכשיו, לאדוארד סנודן. כמה פרטים עליו למי שלא זוכר או לא מאופס. הוא בן 35, הוא הוגדר רשמית כגאון שבגאונים, זה נבחן כמה פעמים. הוא עבד בקודש הקודשים של המודיעין האמריקאי בשני גופי ביון המשפיעים בעולם, ב-CIA וב-NSA. הוא החזיק בהרשאות כניסה גבוהות ביותר למידע המודיעיני הכי מסווג בעולם. הוא תפעל מערכות שעקבו אחרי מיליוני בני אדם, הוא ניצל, כלומר מערכות ניצלו, את AT&T, את Verizon, את סקייפ, את גוגל, פייסבוק, AOL, מייקרוסופט, אפל, יהו. סנודן הבין שבניגוד לטיעון שלפיו מדובר במעקבים שמבוצעים אחרי אנשים שחשודים בטרור, רוב המעקבים האלה מבוצעים אחרי אזרחים תמימים, כמוני כמוכם, שגולשים באינטרנט ומשתמשים בטלפון לענייני יום יום. אחרי שהתעוררו אצלו ספקות, הוא פנה לממונים עליו ב-NSA, הפניות עלו בתוהו, והוא החליט לעשות מעשה שאת המחיר שלו משלם עד היום. הדובר שלנו חשף בפני כל העולם שהמודיעין האמריקאי, הבריטי וגם גופים אחרים, כולל הישראלים, מאזינים, עוקבים אחר מאות מיליוני אנשים ברחבי העולם, מאזינים למנהיגים פוליטיים ועסקיים ברחבי העולם, חולקים מידע על אזרחים סוכניות מודיעין של מדינות אחרות, וכמובן מכחישים את זה ומסתירים את זה מהציבור במשך שנים. הפרסומים עוררו סערות רבות בכל העולם, יצרו גלי הדף אדירים בקהילות המודיעין בעולם, ועוררו דיון ציבורי אינטנסיבי בשאלות של פרטיות מול ביטחון. בין שלל הגילויים נחשף שה-NSA ניהל מעקבים, האזין ויראה הודעות דואר אלקטרוני של ראש הממשלה הישראלי, דאז אהוד אולמרט, של שר הביטחון אהוד ברק ושל העוזר שלו יוני קורן. בעקבות המעשים בוטלה האזרחות האמריקאית של הדובר שלנו, הוא מואשם עד היום בעבירות על חוק הרגול האמריקאי, בגניבת רכוש ממשלתי. אם ישוב לארצות הברית, הוא עשוי לעמוד לדין באשמה של ריגול, שהעונש בגינה יכול גם להגיע עד לעונש מוות. שורה של אנשי ממשל בכירים באמת קוראים לעשות את זה, כולל להוציאו להורג, ביניהם נשיא ארצות הברית טראמפ. הוא נמצא היום במקלט מדיני ברוסיה, היא המדינה היחידה שהסכימה שלא לגרש אותו, אחרי ש22 בקשות שהגיש למקלט מדיני נדחו בלחץ אמריקאי כבד. הוא מתגורר במקום סודי במוסקבה, והוא רשאי להישאר שם עד 2020. העיתונאי גלן גרינוולד, שחשף את הסיפור, אמר בינואר 2014 שיש מספר אדיר של סיפורים חשובים מאוד, שטרם דווחו בהם סיפורים שקשורים באופן ישיר למזרח התיכון ולישראל. סנודן משמש בשנים האחרונות כנשיא Freedom of Press Foundation, ארגון שמטרתו לקדם את חופש הביטוי וחופש הדיווח העיתונאי. בעקבות הגילויים שלו יש שורה עצומה של גלי הדף. בתי המשפט בארצות הברית ובבריטניה פסקו שהאיסוף השיטתי של מידע על ידי גופי המודיעין היה לא חוקתי, אבל המעקבים נמשכים והחוק שונה כדי לאפשר אותם בחלק גדול מהמקרים. הסרט הדוקומנטרי שצולם עליו, אם מישהו מכם לא ראה, אני ממליץ בחום, זה חד פעמי. הוא זכה באוסקר. בין היצירות שעוסקות בו יש גם סרט עלילתי, תריסר ספרים והצגה שעלתה בברודווי. אני מתכבד להציג בפניכם את אדוארד סנודן. I am honored to present to you Edward Ed Joseph Snowden.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Ed, can I ask you...
It's good to be with you tonight.
Yeah. Can I ask you how are you doing? How cold is it in Moscow now?
It's, well, I hope you know Fahrenheit. It's about 40 degrees this week. So
Fairly
pretty
cold.
cold, pretty cold, but not quite freezing.
Mm-hmm. And may I ask, like in general, what keeps you busy these days?
Yeah, I'm the president of the Freedom of the Press Foundation, which sounds like a much bigger title than it actually is. When we think about what I'm actually doing, it's trying to resist the slide that I think we all see, that we all feel when we look at what's happening to the world around us. This is an organization that is designed to try to keep alive the channels of communication that inform the public that are starting to fail. And I think in a large way this is happening because they're under attack. But if I could just take a minute actually to give some introductory remarks, and I know this will take a while, but it's something that I think is useful. There's the little history. People, have heard about what I've done tonight, but I want to explain it in a more direct way. And more generally, thank all of you for inviting me to speak tonight. It's easy to talk to people. But it's not always a popular thing. And you guys might not be surprised to hear that when this event was announced, a lot of people, including some of my trusted friends, they called on me. And they asked me not to appear, or to cancel, or not to speak.
For what
in
reason?
solidarity with those that are boycotting the occupation. And like most Americans, I am against the occupation, and I have a lot of respect for those who are working to end it, wherever they are. So canceling, not showing up, that's the safe option. But if you've heard my story and you think about where I've been and the things I've seen, if there's one thing that I know, it's that what's safe is not always the same as what's right. And while I understand that many of you here tonight may disagree with what I have to say, as well as some of those who are not here disagreeing with my saying it at all, I think that's the reason why having these conversations is so important. Because I really believe that when we stop talking, we also stop listening. And I don't think that progress can come without a dialogue. So let me start with a little history lesson. 5 years ago, 3 journalists and I were sitting in this hotel room in Hong Kong. Sweat just pouring down our faces. We haven't left. We all smell bad. We're working all day long. And we're waiting to see how you and the rest of the world were going to react to the first revelation of global mass surveillance. This is the idea that the National Security Agency, working in cooperation with many other intelligence groups around the world, had been making records of almost anything they could. In the United States, it was every phone call in the United States that the government could access through commercial partnerships, through letting themselves in through the back door, whatever they could get. And in the days that followed, journalists and others published documents revealing that democratic governments, right, in liberal societies had been monitoring the private activities of ordinary citizens who had done nothing wrong. Now, within a couple days, of course, the government responded. They charged me under these ancient laws that were intended to be used against spies, but they've become increasingly useful for jailing the sources of journalists, right, who are not selling secrets for their own private gain, but risking their freedom for the public benefit. Politicians, they were all against us, saying everything was terrible, people were going to die. And there were moments when I wondered if all of us who were working on this project had put so much on the line for basically nothing. Because you get people in the audience, maybe some of you, who react with indifference. And they go, oh yeah, everybody knew this, of course it was happening. That kind of practiced cynicism. But now we're in the world of 2018, which is almost unrecognizable from back then. And the reality is the collection and abuse of our data is not only still being talked about, it's being talked about more. And it's this principle that once you move things from that distance, that realm of conspiracy theory to fact, the conversation changes. And it's not enough. But when we look at what's happened since then, now everybody knows about this, and governments have not responded quickly enough to put controls on this. And so what does this mean? Proliferation. You might be okay with the government being able to do these kind of things, right? Like, how did this happen? And the reality is surveillance, technology just moves more quickly than law. And so a generation ago, this stuff was hard. This stuff was expensive. It was difficult to manage. You had people out on the street. You had teams in cars. You had people wearing headphones in buildings, drilling taps into the walls. To track one person, took a group. But now, one person can track a group. It's scalable, right? So you go, all right, I don't care. I've got nothing to hide. What's the government gonna scare me with? I'm on their side. But what about those companies, right? What about that proliferation? What about other governments? Where does this go? What does the corporate side of this really look like when you have anonymous men with their machines in faraway places? You don't know their names. You can't touch them with your laws because they're not in your jurisdiction, and all they do all day long is they make lists. Facebook is probably one of the best examples of this. Google is the worst. Facebook is working real hard to get there, but they're still number 2. But they're the best example because they're what we see. Google works quite hard to stay invisible. Facebook's all over the headlines. And the thing is, Facebook doesn't care about you. Facebook doesn't care about your country or your politics. It doesn't care about your future or what happens to you. Facebook cares about one thing and one thing only, and that's your data. They are a surveillance company, and their product is you. What they make, what they create, what they keep to themselves and what they rent to others, it is the story of your life, the lives of your neighbors, your most private preferences. It's a record of every article you've ever bothered to click while you're logged in. But it's deeper than that. It's the people that you care about and who means the most to you among them. It's the ideas that attract you and the things that repel you. It is a system that is designed, when you take a step back, to put your mind on a shelf with a price tag that's available to anyone who's got the money. And the scary thing is, it works. Now, some of you are going to say, you know, these are just the things that I put out there online voluntarily, right? You'd be wrong, but for the sake of argument, let's pretend that's right. And let's make it a little bit more real. Let's make it a little bit more personal. How many of you who are there, you know, have an iPhone or an Android phone, right? A smartphone of any kind, basically everybody. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story here. And for those of you who are familiar with this company, I want you to just pretend you've never heard of them. I've not made a mistake in describing them. But let's say there's a Russian cybercrime company whose entire business right now is based on the idea of developing digital burglary tools. And they go by the name of the NSO group. And it works like this. They send you a time-sensitive text message, and it's got a link in it. It's something that you have that, you know, human impulse. You see it, you go, oh goodness, I need to check that. And see what's going on with this. It could be a delivery thing for a package. It could be something that they've used, for example, in Mexico, where they say, there's people outside your house, a van, have you seen this, what's going on? And you go, oh man, I need to see what that is. You click it. As soon as you click the link, and everybody clicks the link, because they can try this 100 different times in 100 different ways, always from different number. Your phone now belongs to whoever sent you that message. Everything in the entire history of your phone, they can immediately copy. Everything that happens on your phone from that day forward, every place you go, everyone you call, everything you read, every photo you take, every, you know, audio note that's been on that, or actually because they can turn the microphone on remotely. They can turn the camera on remotely even when you haven't already taken a picture. Everything that just passes by this device now, everything that your phone is a part of, this company and their customers are now a part of. And I just want you to reflect on that capability for a second. And the nature of it being created and provided by this Russian enterprise. And in their defense, you know, the business says they only sell it to legitimate customers, police and government agencies. And they only do this for the purpose of targeting terrorists and criminals. How do you feel about that? Nobody likes terrorists and criminals. Maybe it won't affect you, maybe it won't affect people like you, ordinary people. And so you go, all right, you know, these aren't my people. Now let me add a little bit more detail. This NSO group, and this is a real company and it's a real example, not Russian. They're actually Israeli. And they're based out of Herzliya, right, by Tel Aviv, I think. My geography over there is a little shaky. So.
Yeah, you're correct.
And, to a lot of people in the audience, that makes this a lot less scary, right? Like all the fear sort of deflates, except for all of those of you who already knew about this company, because you trust your industry, maybe, more than others. It's only natural. And they sell this digital burglary tool, this software called Pegasus, to lots of people, right? The Israeli government, they surely got it, but that maybe doesn't bother you, right? What I want you to think about is who else has bought this? Who else can use this? How it happened, how you would know, how you would control this, and how much you trust. Not just this company, not just your relationship with your government, but its business model. Because this is the thing. The NSO group, they can't monopolize an entire business model. There are other groups that are going to replicate the same thing. The NSO group, in today's world, based on the evidence we have, they are the worst of the worst in selling these burglary tools that are being actively currently used to violate the human rights of dissidents, opposition figures, activists, to some pretty bad players. But they're not alone. And the idea is that companies like this increasingly are popping up all around the world, right? Israel has a phenomenally advanced tech sector, right? You guys are good at this. I mean, it's something to take pride in. But is it really cybersecurity? And these companies that represent themselves as, aiding law enforcement or as cybersecurity companies, when they're creating tools that is actually making, it's a kind of predation. Their business model is searching for vulnerabilities in our critical infrastructure, right? The phone that rides in your pocket every day, the systems that you rely on, not to fix them, but to hide them, to make sure they stay open for as long as possible in order to sell access to them, to their entire chain of customers. And so this is something that I think has not gotten enough attention recently. The NSO group is special because while we do have these other guys around the world who are trying to do the same thing, we have documentation. We have a Canadian research group of academics who's managed to catch what these guys are doing because they made some mistakes and they sold it to the wrong people. And when you look at what Pegasus does and where it's gone, where it's spread, this is not just something that's being used for the defense of Israel, right? It's not something that's being used just for catching criminals. It's not something that's being used for saving lives and thwarting terrorist attacks. How do we know this, right? You already saw the kind of messages that they're sending there. And the key is, who are they sending them to? These are to Mexican journalists, right? And it's not just journalists. They send it to media figures. They send it to people who are in law enforcement and lawyers. They sent it to public health officials. They sent it to, I believe, the president of the Senate in Mexico, anti-corruption groups. And how? It's not like this company outside Herzliya even knows who these people are, right? But they don't really care because that's not their problem. And when you get this kind of widespread targeting and these methods of education, you're teaching digital depredation widely, beyond borders, to these other governments and these other groups that you can't control. You can't even see what they're doing in terms of your contracts and whatnot because they don't want you to know, because maybe you'll leak information. It starts to be used, like on this, a journalist who put out a report that was critical of the then Mexican president. But when she didn't immediately click on it, they went to her children, right? And where does this lead? Some of you may have heard about this Saudi journalist and dissident, Jamal Khashoggi, if you follow the news. He was living in the United States, continuing with his criticism of the government at the time. And I know, maybe people are trying to build better relations over there right now. But when we think about this on the level of human rights, this guy's a writer. He's not building bombs. He's not, developing plots. He's writing things people don't like. And he went into the Turkish consulate. He was immediately strangled. We still don't know what happened to his body, but we know the Saudis sent 15 people into their consulates, killed this man, and they did it. How did this get planned? How did this come together? How did they know where he was going, when he was going? Obviously, they knew he was going to come to the consulate because he had to make an appointment. They knew he had to walk in, and when he set foot through that doorway, he was already doomed, right? But how did they know what his plans and intentions were? How did they decide that he was someone they needed to act against, who was worth the risk? And the reality is they had bugged one of his few friends and contacts using software created by an Israeli company. And, you know, we don't know the chain of consequence because this company will never comment on this, although it's one of the major stories that's not being written about. But how much of his friend, who was also in exile in Canada, who was basically just running a YouTube channel, they're kind of confiding in each other, informed these kind of efforts? And how much did these kind of operations happen every day in 1,000 different ways, where these companies, right, whether they're in Israel, whether they're somewhere else, go, this is not my problem. How is it that when we have privileged and capable industries in developed countries using their powers, right, not for saving lives, but for making money, to such an extent and to such a level of recklessness and irresponsibility that it actually starts costing lives? Now, even if you agree with all of this, even if you think it's okay, even if you think these are just a couple bad apples, and by the way, there's a long history showing again and again that this is happening. If you're interested in it, the Citizen Lab has published open and public reports on the operation of this company and how their software is being used and the costs of it. But I want you to go again back to that business model, to that dynamic. This gets a little bit technical, right? But the kind of defenses that these companies put forward, besides going, well, we just sell it to police, we just sell it to law enforcement, we sell it to governments, right? These are people who we should be able to trust. And therefore, what they do after it, you know, we'll investigate if somebody tells us about it, but 9 times out of 10, no one will ever know. So it's not really a meaningful form of oversight. But even if you find all of that convincing, I want you to think about something different, which is that dynamic of proliferation. Israel has a real leg up in technology right now, particularly in these kind of offensive operations. They're really, really good, right? Even the NSA realizes that we get hacked by the Israelis, right? When we file our sort of counterintelligence priorities matrix, it's always the same 4, right? You got your usual suspects, your China and Russia, right? But then you also have Israel, and you also have France, right? If I were going to put these guys in the ranking, I would put Israel above France.
I don't remember that
but as
ever
good as
being
that might,
published, Ed, right?
I'm not sure. These things are pretty common knowledge in the industry, at least. But you know, maybe it's not. But what we have here is, let's say you have a national advantage. You start commercializing it, you start selling it, and you go, we're only going to sell it to this government, and blah, blah, blah. Great, that's all established, we know that. What if that government takes that tool and they infect themselves with it, right? They say we're going after terrorists, but it's actually one of their own guys. And the whole purpose of it is just to capture this exploit, this thing that gets sent to the iPhone, that link, and then copy it. And now not only can the company no longer make money off of it, although the government is going to keep this contract alive so they can get more and more exploits, as they then use this burglary tool to get into other people who Israel and this company now have no knowledge of, they have no insight into, they don't see how this is being used because it's happening off their radar outside of the commercial relationship. They can now use it against you, and they can use it against everybody else. And it teaches them how these things are found. It teaches them how these things are made. It teaches them where to look, right? This is not a cybersecurity industry. This is a cyber insecurity industry. And let me summarize here because I know people have questions. The thing that I have to constantly remember is that we wouldn't know any of this if people weren't willing to take risks to tell us. Even the people who are in academia, who are just watching the systems, who are responding to people's forensic requests, this is not the kind of thing that makes you friends. And it's this willingness to take risks, to tell us, the public, what is being hidden from us, what nobody wants us to know, but we desperately need to know, that moves us toward a better world. We need to be willing to accept some level of risk on both an individual and social basis if we want to actually enjoy what liberty is. Because, ladies and gentlemen, that's what this is all about. None of us can be safe unless all of us are safe on the longest time frames. And when we start letting flags get in the way, when we start letting communities get in the way, when we start letting identities get in the way of our collective sense of purpose, when we stop talking, when we stop listening, we create borders that don't keep others out. They keep us in. And eventually, when we're in this kind of world, where we're so afraid of all of the real dangers that we know are out there, right? That we start to limit our own activities, that we start fearing and we stop daring, we stop progressing. When we stop progressing, we stop living. And look, I've sat at the desk, I've typed in the names, I've read the communications, right? Terrorists are real, and some of them are very dangerous. But the thing that there are not a lot of people that are willing to say, but I think most of us who read the news, particularly in your neighborhood, see, is that these are also not rocket scientists, right? It's rare to have the evil mastermind. And if we can allow ourselves to be terrorized by someone with nothing but a knife, to reorder our societies for the convenience of state power, or we refuse to regulate the kind of corporate power, both domestically and internationally, that actually starts to shape policy and boundaries in our future, we've stopped being citizens, and we've started being subjects. We've stopped being proactive and deciding where we're going, and we've started permitting other people to make those decisions for us. So with that, let's go to questions.
Yeah. You portrayed very dark picture, and I think in the past you were quoted as saying that state-operated surveillance is more worrisome to you than private surveillance and company and commercial surveillance. And I'm hearing that you changed your mind. Is it
No,
so?
it's actually consistent. The distinction is to help people who are less familiar with this space understand the dynamics of how this all comes together. The thing that's particularly scary about governments relative to companies is governments actually use this to create kinetic effects, to put people in cages, to end lives. Companies enable this, but they do not direct it in quite the same way. Moreover, even the most privileged companies have limitations on what they can access. They have their data, but not their competitors. In today's world, anybody who can stamp a warrant can get data from every company. And this creates a different sort of magnitude of threat. Mm-hmm. But there's also the question of application. This corporate data collection is being made available to many, many, many more groups. And this creates a different character of threat.
You talked to us about NSO, which I think everybody in the audience is aware of them, at least in a certain level. But how different, how outstanding is that in the whole world of private, of commercial surveillance? I mean, is Israel different than other nations, other companies who deal with the same kind of profession?
So this isn't my deepest area of expertise, and I think maybe one of our guests who come on later can speak to this with more local knowledge. But my understanding from reading what's both open and not open is that in the Israeli model, there is a closer level of collaboration between the corporate and the state. In the United States after 2013, you saw all of these big technology companies who had been very eagerly and aggressively cooperating with the United States government far beyond what the law required. Microsoft, Google, Apple, Facebook, all these guys, Yahoo as well, trying to distance themselves, saying, oh, you don't understand it, oh, it's a little bit wrong, and we're going to change things. This will never happen again. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see that happening too frequently. I think that's one of the differences.
Wait, the line was cut. Can you repeat the last sentence, please?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see that same reaction typically happening in Israel.
Not so much. No, but maybe that is happening for a reason, because I think Israelis do love freedom, but they love security even more. And when you have the knife on your throat or rockets falling over your home every day, so maybe you will not risk your life for digital freedom so easily. I mean, isn't it natural to prefer life and security over freedom of speech if that's the choice you have to make?
Well, we certainly see it's persuasive, right, in terms of political influence. We have seen this same argument made in the United States and France and Germany and the UK. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. But we all forget the origins of this, or at least we elide the origins because we go, it's a convenient and persuasive argument, and it's from Nazi Germany, right? This is not saying that everybody who repeats it is a Nazi, but we have divorced the statement from its origin. And the reality is, when you look at what that argument is intended to do, it's a rhetorical trick. It is designed to change the burden of argument from being on the government to explain why they need to intervene, to show evidence to a court, to go, we want to monitor this person, we suspect them of association with a terrorist group, we suspect them of being a criminal, to instead putting it on society at every individual level and saying, we need you to justify why you need your rights. But if you have to justify your rights, you're not living in a liberal society. And this is what we forget. Look, everybody is scared everywhere in our lifetimes. Some people, some countries, some locations feel this more acutely than others. But we have to recognize this isn't about digital freedom, right? This is about capital F freedom. Your online life is your offline life today. There's not a distinction, it's not theoretical, right? Your phone knows more about you than you do. And when we start going, oh, we're gonna make exceptions, we're gonna go, this doesn't matter for this, that, or the other, I don't need this right because of where I am today, because I'm safe, I'm protected, right? Or I'm not a threat, nobody should be afraid of me. I'm not interesting, I'm not an oppositionist, I'm not an activist. What you're saying is that everybody who is different, who does need this right, they don't deserve the same level of protection. But who moves society forward, right? The inventors, the writers, the speakers, the thinkers, they are the ones who are different, right? The orthodoxy is not interesting. paradoxy is not something new. It is our differences, our heresies, that are the seed of progress. And it is privacy that produces these differences. We know from study after study that when people think they're being watched, they begin to act differently. There's a kind of, we call it performative surveillance, right? Where you show people they're being watched, and then people act as if they're being watched because they know they're being judged by people who are not them, who don't understand what they care about, what they think about, who they are, who they love. And they just don't want people to make mistakes, because when we start talking about state power, and when we start talking more and more about corporate power, that does have real world effects, right? When they start deciding who gets a job, who gets a loan, who can travel. All of these things are based on the idea that surveillance reaches the correct conclusion. And anyone who has ever worked in intelligence, who doesn't admit that intelligence gets things wrong, and frequently, because that's the nature of intelligence, is lying. They're being deceptive, right? But they do get it right sometimes. And it's this understanding that things are wrong, that things are indeterminate. You get as close to shore as you can, and all of these models miss when we start making decisions on the basis of records about people at scale. The collection of everything about everyone, not because we think they've done anything wrong, but because we want to have it in case we develop an interest in them. This is called the bulk collection regime. But what the bulk collection regime justifies is the creation of a surveillance time machine, where every utterance, every thought, every purchase we've made, everything we've read, everywhere we've gone, everyone we've met, begins to be recorded and databased and stored to the best of our capability. And right now it's not forever, but with each year it gets closer to forever. To where we start to realize what surveillance is actually about. Surveillance is not about safety. Surveillance is about control. These are similar but distinct concepts, right? Surveillance is an expression of power. And when we allow ourselves to be surveilled to a certain level, right? When there are lists with all of our, and the structures of power change, we have very little ability to resist them. We have very little ability to change them, right? And we start to begin to be acted upon exclusively by those who hold and influence these levers of power. And while you might be comfortable thinking it is the state today, what is that going to look like in 5 years and 10 years? Never more than one election away from the, right? Even the best of countries. But what happens as corporate influence continues to increase and government influence may begin to recede, because we start to express our technologies through fundamental laws, universal laws, right? Physics, math, science, that a court order cannot overcome. And so the laws that we write down become less influential. This cuts both ways, right? And I think the thing that people need to remember is that losing rights, that's a one-way ratchet, right? These aren't things that are temporary. These aren't things that are transient. Everybody, out there understands this. This ratchet only tightens. And once you've lost a certain amount of that, you can ask nicely, you can hope, you can pray, you can protest, but you can't actually impose your will on the structures that you're answerable to. Now, a lot of people in Israel go, look, I don't care about this. I trust my government. I identify with my government is helping me. Okay, fine, right? But think about the future that you want your children to have. Think about the world that you want everybody to live in, right? I love my flag, right? I am an American. I want to get back home. And I love my country. But I love my world more. And when we lose sight of this, when we forget that, arguing that I have nothing to hide is no different than saying I don't care about free speech because I have nothing to say. is an abdication of responsibility as a person in this world. This world will only ever be as good as we make it. And if we're constantly afraid, if we are constantly hiding, if we are constantly making the safe choices, if we are afraid to speak, if we're afraid to be different, if we're afraid to go, look, I don't have something to hide, I have something to protect. And that's the kind of liberal and open society that I want to live in.
So Ed, but
we deserve everything we get.
Let's be a little bit maybe more practical. What do you expect the average citizen to do? What do you expect of governments to do?
So the first thing is they need to stop playing games rhetorically to justify mass surveillance programs because they're interesting, or maybe even in some contexts they're useful, by presenting them as if they're targeted surveillance. The bulk collection of everyone's information, right? This is a fundamentally dangerous capability. And they don't want to talk about this, right? Instead, they want to talk about process, they want to talk about protocol, they want to talk about the way these things are done and held and handled. But in the United States, at least, when mass surveillance was revealed, the President of the United States came under intense criticism for permitting this. And so he appointed two independent committees. The President's, the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board did a report on this, and the President's Review Group on Intelligence and Communications Technologies. Full access to classified information could go to the FBI, the NSA, the CIA, look at what they had, and go, did these programs, did collecting everybody's phone records, did it save lives? Because the intelligence community said, yes, this is the only thing that was keeping us from hell. And when they looked at this, they found the answer was no. In fact, it had never saved a single life in the entire more than 10-year secret operation of the program. And the only thing that they said it was actually peripherally useful for was identifying a financial transaction. A cab driver in California sent $8,500 to his clan in Somalia, right? Al-Shabaab, which we don't like very much because they are violent, right? But this is not exactly the greatest terrorist mastermind in the world. Moreover, in the same report, they said they could have gotten this same information through traditional means by just going to the court because they already had everything they needed to. They were already closing in on the guy. And this is the case that we see again and again. We see this in the wake of terrorist attacks in France. We see it happening in Canada. We see it happening in Germany. I'm not familiar with how frequently it happens in Israel, particularly because of the censorship regime there. But the reality is whenever there is a terrorist, one of these guys drives through a crowd, there's a stabbing, there's a shooting, there's a bombing. The police come out and we go, oh, we knew this guy. He was in our database. We knew everything that was going on with him, but we weren't paying attention to it. And this is the fatal flaw of bulk collection.
Yes.
When you collect everything, you understand nothing because your attention is unfocused. You have limited people, you have limited resources, and you're focusing on unproven technical programs and capabilities, which can be very interesting, they can be useful in certain capabilities, but primarily intelligence protection, right? Sometimes counter cyber. For countering terrorism, in the history that we have, at least publicly, and the classified side from the US that I've seen, they're not especially effective. Targeted surveillance works.
Yeah, but Ed, if I look at the outcome of your deeds 5 and something years after, we could say that intense compilation efforts did not stop. US and British legislation was adapted to enable such compilation in violation of privacy. And, as the general public, I think we've adjusted to the situation. I mean, we understand that everything is exposed, and even if we don't like it, somewhere deep inside, we know it, and I think we're fine with it. I mean, are you disappointed with that?
No, because I'm not sure it's actually true. Certainly, we have had legal reforms that have, rather than changing the activities in the wake of a scandal to make the intelligence agencies comply with the law, they make the law comply with the preferences of the intelligence agencies. But not everywhere and not the same way. In
But
most
if I
cases,
take
there
you
are new
5 years
protocols,
back,
there are new oversight. Sorry?
no, I mean, if I take you 5 years back, is this what you thought would happen?
Yeah, so the thing was, it was not my plan to tell the world how to live. Right? I came forward not to decide this is the policy we should have. I've got strong opinions and strong biases. And this is specifically why I did not self-publish. I did not just take every document I had access to and put it out on the internet. I could have, but I didn't. Instead, I went to journalists and I had them go through this specifically for the purpose of removing my biases from the equation and having them make an independent editorial judgment of what the public not only deserved to know, but needed to know in order to sort of direct their democracy. But when you go, am I disappointed or anything like this? No, I think that kind of reflection is actually too short-sighted. I think things are actually getting better. It's just happening sub rosa. Now, what's happening is the technical class is becoming radicalized in many ways. There was a famous document from the archive that I helped publish that showed the NSA, for example, was going beyond what they had legal access to, beyond what they could get from companies like Google, and were actually spying on the back-end connections between their data centers. And they put little smiley faces on it, talking about how clever they were. And this is where the encryption is removed, and this is where they get in. They were so proud of themselves, right? Being able to ransack the private lives of millions and hundreds of millions of Americans and others. And the thing is this, that's no longer possible in the same way. Now, it's a cat and mouse game. And we don't want to be fighting that against every government in the world, right? Because governments have more or less staggering budgets. But no amount of violence will ever solve a math problem. And we are starting to see our human rights, both offline and online, being enforced through new means. And this is that same kind of science and technology I'm talking about before. Just like Google encrypted their data center links in a new way, the World Wide Web's traffic, right? Everything that you send over the internet. Unencrypted means electronically naked. Anybody can see it, take pictures of it, record it, share it, do whatever. Encrypted communications, where now it's a little bit more private, you're wearing something. People see the outside of the envelope, but not the inside, is starting to become pervasive. And within my lifetime, I think it will be completely pervasive.
Yeah. May I ask a question from an Israeli standpoint? Your expose dealt mainly with how the NSA compiles information on US citizens, but what about non-US citizens, such as Israeli citizens? We're just like US citizens in the terms of internet habits. We live on Google, we live on Facebook, we live on Amazon, on Microsoft. What is the US surveillance program doing to us? What does it know about us? About non-Americans?
Right. So everything that's happening to Americans is happening to you and worse. That's the short version. The longer version.
What is the worst? What is worse?
Yeah. So if you're an American, there's a court process that's supposed to be followed that involves the FBI and sort of handing this off to an interagency process. And you actually have to get a court order. Now, they can still dodge this and go through, secret courts that will basically do anything that the intelligence agencies ask for. But in many cases, for an analyst when I was sitting at Hawaii, I didn't need to go to any court. Right? I could type in your IP address, I could type in your email address, and as long as I could line this up with general categories of behavior, right? I think you have intelligence that's related to the operation of a foreign government, which is every journalist, for example. Or I think you're involved, or I have what we call a reasonable articulable suspicion, which basically just means a gut feeling that you're willing to write down.
Did you even need to express it in front of
anyone?
anyone?
No good. I can pull these things directly out of all the traffic that we can see.
I mean, did you even need to express your concern in writing or in oral to anyone,
It's like 4 words.
As is that. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, if I'm tracking what I think might be a Chinese hacker, I go believed to be associated with, and then the code name that we use for this Chinese group. That's it, right? That's it. I don't have to say why I believe they're that. I don't need to sort of put forth any evidence. I just put in, this is what I felt. And if anybody has a problem with it, they'll come and ask me about it. But no one ever asks.
By the way, to the best of your knowledge, do Israeli intelligence use same methods as American do?
The Israelis are some of our closest partners.
That's diplomatic.
And yeah, I mean, the reality is anything that we're doing that the Israelis aren't doing now, they're trying to do. And they're probably jealous of. And it has to do with the fact that we have more traffic routing through the United States than is going through Israel.
Yeah, well, follow on your talk, Deputy Head of the Mossad will speak here, and maybe he will refer to that as well. Let me ask you a few questions about your own life. I mean, before the affair exploded, you wrote, "I already know how this will end for me, and I accept the risk." What did you mean? Is your life in danger?
So today, I don't live day to day like in fear of what's going to happen. Am I going to be thrown off a building? Am I going to be shot? Am I going to be poisoned?
Yeah. Do you go out? Do you shop? Do you eat outside?
Sorry.
Do you have friends?
Yeah. No, I mean, I ride the subway. No, it's one of these things where there are always going to be periods when you take a risky action, something that people don't like, where you realize people are going to want to retaliate, and there could be consequences. For me, at the time of writing that, it's realizing that the likeliest outcome of this was that I would be in prison for the rest of my life, or just disappeared, prison ship in the Indian Ocean somewhere. But that didn't come to pass, and that's an extraordinary thing, unlikely thing. But even so, right, I'm in exile. Exile is starting to fail. It's another one of these dynamics where you go, oh, everything's bad in the world. Not all of it. It's getting harder and harder to stop people from talking. I have to lay my head down in Moscow on a pillow at night, but I live on the internet in every other city in the world. That's how I'm with you now. And there's something fundamentally powerful and encouraging about this. And this is the reason I don't worry about what happens to me, because I can be proud of the decisions that I made. And the reality is, when you're satisfied with your values, when you understand that you're not ignoring risks, right? They're out there and you try to mitigate them as best you can, but you realize that working for the public good is more important than working for the private benefit, even if that's the government's benefit, because the government and the public are definitely not the same thing. That's when you realize, look, there are dangerous decisions. But if we didn't take risks, we wouldn't ever accomplish anything. We wouldn't leave the house in the morning.
Yeah, but there are risks and there are risks. Can I ask you what it is that you miss the most at home, and what are your plans for the rest of your life? I mean, if you look into the future, 10, 20, 50, 100 years, I hope for you, what do you expect? Do you expect ever the atmosphere to be right for you to go back home?
Yeah. Actually, I do, and this is something that surprises people, particularly when you see the kind of insanity and darkness that our politics, not just American politics, are descending into around the world, where the people that we have at the head of government are maybe not convicted, but probably criminal. And what does this actually mean, right? And what this means is we're starting to remind people why it's worth taking these risks, right? The world that we see today is from people becoming too comfortable. It's from people seeing problems and not being willing to actually give something up to challenge them. We oppose them, we don't agree with them, we don't believe in them, right? But when it comes to actually paying something to stop them from spreading, from growing, we go, somebody else will do it. You know, things will work out. They always do. And the reality is they don't always work out until we make them so.
My last question before we ask some questions from the audience will not be to you, Ed, but rather to the audience, which I hope you cannot see. And my question is, please raise your hands. And I'm going to ask you do you feel that Snowden right now, who is right here in front of you, is he more a freedom fighter or a traitor or a criminal? Who feels that this gentleman, who you've been hearing for an hour, is more of a freedom fighter? Ooh, maybe you can hear that, Ed.
I can.
Who feels that he's more criminal or a traitor? Okay.
Was that our representative from the Mossad?
I know what he's feeling. He will say it right here. I can tell you that as far as my eyes can judge, it was 2/3 to 1/3, and the same outcome as I had in my small Twitter questionnaire earlier today. One of every 3 people feels negatively about your deeds, but 2 definitely view you as a freedom fighter. What do you think? In 100 years, will you be remembered more as a modern-day Martin Luther King or a treacherous Mordechai Vanunu or Daniel Ellsberg?
Look, hopefully I won't be remembered at all. Because
That's hard to
if
believe.
I'm being remembered, it's in the context of sort of all the bad things that we're probably still struggling with. When we asked about hero and traitor, you know, and this is the popular thing, people like easy categories. What I like to tell people is it doesn't matter. Literally, if you think I'm the worst person on earth, fine, great. If you think I'm the best, you're wrong, but I appreciate it. And what it's actually about is what was said, what you learned, what's happening in the world, and where this is going, right? What happens to me, it doesn't really matter. For me, on a personal basis, it matters very much. But for the world, for history, who cares? I am a footnote. I was only the mechanism of disclosure, right? What I would ask you is, would you rather not know? And that, at the end of the day, if the answer is in the negative, what you're saying is you want to be governed rather than have a role in the process.
Thank you, Ed. Let's turn to some questions from the audience here. I want to remind again my friends from the media, this is not a press conference. And please do not video record any of the session. Also, I apologize again. We will not be able to take anybody's questions, but here's the microphone. Let's move forward. Are you first? Go ahead, mister.
Good evening, Mr. Snowden. Wonderful hearing from you tonight. Here in Israel, you know, you're saying that you go around in the subway in Moscow and everything, but on the other hand, you're speaking with us from a secret location. How much are you afraid that this conversation, or in a wider kind of bridge, that the Americans, and in that case also the Israelis, very close allies, all looking for you, all making actions to find you and maybe, you know, capture you or worse? Thank you.
So thanks for the question. First off, it's not like a super secret location. It's where I live, right? You know, I've got my camera, I've got my lights. You know.
No, the question is, do you have a sign says Edward Snowden outside your door?
Well, obviously not. Right. And this is because, first off, I'm a privacy advocate, right? Like, come on. But yeah, look, I don't know what people are trying to do. Maybe our friend can inform us in the next session. So I'm going to take precautions, but I'm not going to live in fear. I'm still going to speak, I'm still going to live, I'm still going to act, because if they act against me, they only prove my point. This was, what happened in 2013 was never about surveillance. It was about democracy. It was about what happens when a system of government fails comprehensively. The executive, the legislative, the judiciary, they all fail in their roles. And how do we correct that? How do we set that back on the right path without public involvement? These things were not legal, right? But we didn't get the ruling that they were not legal until it had finally been made public after basically 15 years of operation. What does it mean when the government entitles itself to authorities without getting the public's consent, right? And even the heads of these agencies, right? People who were personally embarrassed by this, people who were implicated in criminal activity by this, they have admitted now years later that they should have just come forward and told the public what they were doing because they think they could have persuaded the public to go along board with, to go on with it.
Which they did to a certain extent.
Hang on. The main thing that I want to say in this is I don't think all of these people are trying to kill me, right? I think there were probably a lot of moments where they thought about it. And I recognize I could be wrong because, hey, what do I know, right? But I think their greatest fear was that I had something, some nuclear option. And they wanted to shut me up. Now, they're certainly not fans. They want to see me used as an example, right? A negative outcome to go. This is what happens when you tell people what we don't want them to know. But the world is in flames, and I think they got bigger things to worry about.
Thank you, Ed. Next question, please.
Hello, Mr. Snowden. My name is Niv. First of all, let me say that I think that your acts are incredibly brave and for the price that you've paid for them. But for my question, do you see a world where we can regain our privacy and our rights on the web, where individuals can regain their privacy? Or do you see a future where the closed gardens are continuing to grow, being totally transparent to state actors and our mind being put on a shelf, as you said?
I think it's both until we commit the fork, right? Right now, we're at that fork, and we're being asked to choose a path down it. And everybody is afraid to commit because they want to explore both possibilities. And other people are unwilling to actually realize them, right? They know they want privacy, but they're afraid to give up the convenience that comes with it, right? If Facebook knows everything you want, they can show you everything they think you want. If Google knows everything, everywhere you go, they can give you better traffic directions. But the thing here about where this goes and what we see and what happens with this is I think we will have zones of absolute privacy that are promised by technology and devices that will become more secure over time. Right now, we're living through a disaster scenario of cybersecurity because nothing was designed to be safe and secure. They just wanted to get it working, and they didn't realize that everybody was attacking it the way they were. Now they know. Now everything's being broken into, and even if you're okay with the Israeli government being able to get into an iPhone, right? The same hole that lets them in will let the Iranians in. It'll let the Russians in. It'll let the Chinese in. It'll let whoever your boogeyman is the same way because computers don't make passwords.
Sorry, can you repeat that, please? The line was cut again.
Computers don't check passports.
Yeah. Okay. Next question, please.
Hi, Yona. Even some of your critics, like President Obama, have said that some of what you put out there started a positive conversation. I think what bothers some people who might want to support some of what you did is that even if part of what you put out there was about the surveillance state, a large volume, some might say the vast majority of it, was not necessarily about the surveillance state. Do you wish that some of what you had put out there you hadn't put out there, even if you were in favor of what the things that were surveillance state related?
That's a good question, thank you. The answer is no, and for a lot of different reasons on a lot of different axes. But the primary one here is I never published a single document. Journalists did. And so what you see made public is the intersection between information that I gathered that they needed to know either because I believed that it showed criminal or immoral or improper activity, or information that they simply needed to know on background, so the government couldn't snow them, couldn't basically say, oh, no, we're not doing that, or these programs are saving lives when they're not, or this program is effective and it is useful here. And when the government is making that argument, right, they need to be able to be persuaded, right, not just get biased information and think everything the government does is evil. And so this requires faith. This requires trust in the process. And this is something fundamentally important. Who is best placed in a developed democracy, an open society, to decide what the public needs to know? The government or the press? I think the fact that although the government screamed and screamed, as if this is the worst thing that's ever happened to them, continuously since 2013. We're living in 2018 now, and although they have been asked again and again and again, they have never been able to show a single person who has died as a result of pictures. Certainly, some things may be inconvenient. Certainly, something may have made something more difficult for them. It might have, caused some diplomatic embarrassment. But if whistleblowers and journalists agree the public needs to know, our laws are changed as a result. Our courts change their decisions as a result. Our politicians backtrack and apologize as a result. I think we have to err on the side of disclosure, right? Whenever there's these arguments about, there could be blood on their hands, or we think there will, or this will cause harm, and it's never substantiated, and they'll go, oh, we can't show you. It's too secret. It would cause more damage if we told you about this. This is garbage, and we all know it's garbage because the military and intelligence groups, they always leak stories to the press when it's favorable to them, right? When it discredits their enemies. What this is doing, hang on, this argument is, again, just like the other argument we talked about, trying to shift the burden from a government that's done all of these terrible things, having to explain them, to journalists. Going, you have to prove that these things will cause no harm, and talk about the theoretical risk of good journalism in a free society, rather than the concrete harms of their policies and programs that violated the rights, not just of everyone in their country, but around the world.
Ed, I'm sorry for being so petty, but if I want to stress the question, was there a single moment when you watched the consequences of your deed with horror, with regret?
No.
No.
No. This is the thing. Anybody who has studied this in a concrete and real way, a fair way, an unbiased way, and look, we've had academics go through this. It's just not there. The reason these documents were classified in the first place was not because the intelligence agencies were trying to protect national security. They were trying to protect harm. For their own top secret documents, they said mass surveillance activities and these kinds of surveillance authorities in general were classified to prevent what they called a, quote, damaging public debate on the scale of their activities, because it could lead to legal challenges, because what they knew they were doing was unlawful. Okay. We have had studies done that looked at terrorist activities and gone, they have not changed. We have had the former director of the NSA go, look, yes, this is inconvenient, but it's not a big deal. We have had the NSA official who is actually in charge of the investigation into my disclosure, right? The guy who was like haunting me in the press. He said they should have disclosed these things. So the question is not do I feel bad about any of these things? But rather, why would anyone?
Okay. Next question, please.
Hi, my name is Ehud. You spoke before very harshly about the Israeli cyber industry, and I think a lot of people in this room would agree that it's one of Israel's prides. The people from the army, from 8200, 8200, and I wanted to know if you think there are Israeli cyber companies that quote-unquote make the world a better place.
I think there are probably a lot of them, right? Because the reality is there's defensive technology and there's offensive technology. People can tell the difference. I focus on surveillance, right? So I see offense much more frequently than I see defense. But yeah, the bottom line is all of you guys who are working in companies, working in this industry, you know instantly the difference, right? Because it's a pretty bright line. This is not something where you go, oh, maybe kind of should, this is an edge case. That can happen, but it's not the norm. Either you are closing vulnerabilities, you're stopping offensive actions, you're noticing and reporting on indicators of compromise and things like that, or you're going after people. And if you're going after people, and you're finding holes and you're stretching them and keeping them open and making them more damaging, you're very well aware of how that dynamic functions. And you're basically hoping that there is not an independent rediscovery of the vulnerability that you're exploiting. Or they find it, or they pay for it, or they get it for any other way. But look, even the NSA has done this. And the tools that they developed or bought to go use to go after whoever they're going after were then used to take cash registers offline in Ukraine, hospitals offline in the UK. They stopped shipping at Maersk around the world for days. It's a dangerous game. We are presuming that we are smarter and luckier than all of our adversaries. And they will never have a single day where they are more clever. They will never have a single day where they are more lucky, because the consequences can be devastating if they are. And here is the bottom line on this. We are more reliant on networks and infrastructure than they are. Many of our adversaries in the geopolitical dynamic, many of our rivals, right, are less developed. So we are creating a norm that it is okay to create these kind of industries, to write them a check, to turn a blind eye on the governmental level when they start selling this stuff around the world, to engage in these kind of offensive operations. What are we going to say? Not even when they catch up, but when they get good enough that their rare successes are more damaging to us than our constant ones.
Thank you, Ed. Yes, so Ed, we have drinks here, and I guess we could go through the night, keeping asking questions and hearing your answers, but I will I'll ask for the next and last question to be asked.
What about some women too?
Well, it's a free line, anyone can ask.
So,
Oh yeah, Mr. You already asked, no? Didn't you?
I didn't ask.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. I wonder how much, if at all, your concerns have increased over surveillance in the United States since Trump took office, considering some of his rhetoric and the actions of his administration. And as an American who says you want to go back, maybe if you could just quickly tell us your thoughts on the election today.
Yeah. I said before, we're never farther than one election from disaster. But the flip side of this is we're never more than one election away from doing a good thing, for making things better. It comes down to what we're willing to do, the inconvenience we are willing to shoulder. It's not enough to believe in something, right? You have to stand for something. And I said in my very first interview with the media ever, because as an intelligence officer, you shy away from journalists. And, you know, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was just trying to do my best. But I said something that sounded crazy to a lot of people at the time because Barack Obama was the president. And I said, look, there's going to come a day when there's an election and there's a different hand on the switch. And there's going to be an emergency, there's going to be a crisis, there's going to be an attack, something that gets through, something that makes people afraid. And the person whose hand on that switch is going to go, this time it's different. This time we're going to take the gloves off, you know. And the only thing restricting the operation of these programs is frequently not law and not basic rights. I think the Mossad actually exempts itself from the basic laws of Israel. It's this idea that policy and procedure and process and structure, these are the things that will save us, right? But every time in history we look back at this, every time it's failed. I think you always have to remember that even when it seems crazy, the politics of a people, the politics of a country, the politics of a moment, they are constantly in flux. And you need to be careful that when that hand changes, the lever, the switch, the key upon which it rests is not one for a turnkey tyranny, a system that we have no capacity to resist. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edward Snowden.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. טוב, נפרדנו ממנו ומהשיחה העמוקה והארוכה, ואני רוצה להציג עכשיו את מי שנבחר להגיב לדבריו של סנודן, מר רם בן-ברק. רק רגע, רם. רם נולד ב-1958, הוא גר היום בנהלל, הבוקר הוא חלב פרות, לפני שהוא בא לכאן. אתם לא תבחינו על החליפה היפה שלו בשום עקבות לזה שהוא חקלאי, גם לא טיפות דם. הוא התגייס לסיירת מטכ"ל ב-1976, השתחרר כמפקד פלגה, ב-84 הצטרף למוסד ושרת בתפקידי לחימה ופיקוד עד שהשתחרר ב-2011. הוא שימש כראש אגף קשת, האחראי על המבצעים המיוחדים, סגן ומשנה לראש המוסד. ב-2014 מונה למנכ"ל המשרד לענייני מודיעין ולנושאים אסטרטגיים, היום משמש נשיא חברת הסייבר המימד החמישי ונשיא חברת הייעוץ Fortify Solutions. בינואר 2018 הוא הצטרף למפלגת יש עתיד. אני מתכבד להזמין לבמה את רם בן-ברק.
כמה נחמד להיות ליברל, לדבר דברים נחמדים על חופש ועל חופש דיבור. ואם אתם שואלים אותי איך אני התרשמתי, לפני שנתחיל במה שכתבתי, אני התרשמתי שמדובר בבחור צעיר מאוד מוכשר, שכנראה סובל מחוסר תשומת לב, והחליט לעשות מעשה כדי לזכות בתשומת לב, ככה זה נראה. חלק גדול מה שהוא אמר, הם לא... כנראה שגם אתה קצת סובל מחוסר תשומת לב. אני חושב שחלק מהדברים שהוא אמר הם דברים לא נכונים, ואם אתם הקשבתם למה שהוא אמר, אפשר היה לחשוב שבעצם כל מה שהוא עשה, הוא עשה בגלל שהוא רוצה, כי הוא חושב שחברת NSO הישראלית גורמת נזק בעולם, ובשביל זה הוא גנב 1.5 מיליון מסמכים, סיכן סוכנים וחשף את הסודות הכי כמוסים של ארצות הברית. ככה אני התרשמתי, אתה כמובן יכול לא להסכים איתי. אתם יודעים עכשיו כשהוא לא פה אפשר להגיד שהמזל הגדול שלו שהוא בגד וגנב את המידע מהאמריקאים ולא מהרוסים. סביר להניח שאם הוא היה גונב את זה מהרוסים הוא היה מוצא את עצמו עם גלולת פלוטוניום עמוק בקיבה. כשמסתכלים על הוידאו אפשר להתבלבל. מי ששומע אותו יכול לחשוב שסנודן הוא פטריוט אמריקאי, לוחם זכויות אדם, שכאילו קל להזדהות איתו ועם הערכים הליברליים שכולנו היינו רוצים להיות חלק מהם. אבל עם כל הכבוד, לדעתי זה רחוק מאוד מהמציאות. כשאני לא יודע באמת מה המניעים האמיתיים של סנודן. בסופו של יום, הרי אתה לא יכול לתקן פשע בזה שאתה עושה פשע אחר. אם חשבת שעושים מעשים כנגד החוקה והחוקים האמריקאים, אז הדרך לתקן אותו זה לא בפשע חמור הרבה יותר. סנודן קבע שהצדק והאמת נמצאים בצד שלו. אז הוא גנב 1.5 מיליון מסמכים שחשפו סודות של ארצות הברית ובעלי בריתה, סיכן סוכנים, חשף שיטות פעולה ותשתיות של איך מגיעים לאותו מודיעין. הוא אמר, אני אפרסם את זה וזה יגרום לכך שזה ישתנה. ועל הדרך אני גם אהיה מוכר, מפורסם, אפילו בתל אביב אצל חושן ואורנשטיין. אבל בסופו של יום, אחרי כל הנזק שהוא עשה, סנודן לא הצליח. לא בגלל שחלק מהדברים שלו לא נכונים, אלא בגלל שהשאלה היא מה האלטרנטיבה. אני מסכים שאם מישהו עובד נגד החוקים ונגד הנהלים, צריך להעניש אותו, ואם יש 3 חבר'ה שהחליטו לנצל את הכוח שבידם כדי לפתוח טלפון של שחקנית קולנוע ולשאוב את ההודעות הפרטיות שלה, הם צריכים לשבת בכלא על כך. אבל העולם היום שונה מהעולם שהיה כשנכתבה החוקה האמריקאית, ואפילו מהעולם שהיה אך לפני 15 שנה. המצב החדש הוא שהעולם של היום הוא ישות אחת שכולם מחוברים לכולם ללא גבולות. בנוסף לזה היום ישנו מצב שלא היה בעבר, שחלק גדול מהאויבים שלך הם האזרחים שלך. האמריקאים שהם נגד ארצות הברית בתוך ארצות הברית, צרפתים שהם נגד צרפת, ישראלים שהם נגד ישראל. המצב הזה לא היה מעולם. שהאמריקאים פועלים לפי הנחיות שמקבלים מרחוק כנגד ארצות הברית, וכמו בארצות הברית בכל העולם כולו. אנחנו היינו במציאות שרק לפני 2 שנתיים היו נדקרים אזרחים על בסיס יומי, אפילו מתחת לבניין הזה שאנחנו יושבים בו כולנו. אם פעם היו יושבים על דואר של בן אדם ובפתיחה סמויה אחרי שהיו עוקבים אחריו, היינו רואים מה ההנחיות שהוא קיבל מאיזשהו מפעיל בסודן. היום זה שונה וזה קורה באמצעות מחשב, באמצעות משחקי פלייסטיישן, באמצעות הודעות מוצפנות וכדומה. איך נלחמים בזה? אי אפשר להילחם בזה בכלים שהיו לפני 20 שנה. אני לא חושב שמישהו שאין לו מה להסתיר צריך לחשוש. וההרגשה שסנודן נותן, שכל אחד צריך לדעת שבכל רגע נתון המדינה עוקבת אחריו, זה פשוט לא נכון. המדינה לא יכולה לעקוב אחרי כולם, לא צריכה לעקוב אחרי כולם ולא רוצה לעקוב אחרי כולם. החברות הפרטיות זה משהו אחר. וזה נכון שאם האזינו לאנגלה מרקל ולא היו צריכים להאזין לה, או שעשו את זה ללא סמכות וללא רשות, אז היו צריכים להפסיק את זה, אבל לא צריך להפסיק את כל השיטה. השיטה באה להגן עליכם, היא באה להגן עלינו. אם איזשהו IP בארצות הברית מתקשר עם IP בקבול, זה אמור כנראה להיות מעניין למישהו שדואג לביטחון של האזרחים האמריקאים. למרות ש99% מהקשרים שבין IP בארצות הברית ל-IP בקבול, הם כנראה תמימים לחלוטין, אבל בכל זאת זה מעניין. האם אנחנו רוצים לתת לשירותי הביטחון את היכולת לבדוק קשרים מהסוג הזה? אני שואל אתכם, האם הייתם רוצים ששירותי הביטחון האמריקאים יבדקו אם יש למישהו בארצות הברית קשר למישהו באפגניסטן? זה צריך לעניין אותם? תשאלו את עצמכם את השאלה הזאת. האם אחרי שפתחת את המייל הזה או את ההודעה הזאת וראית שזה תמים ושזה קשר עסקי או מסחרי, אתה צריך לסגור אותו ולהעלים אותו? כן, התשובה היא כן. אז יכול להיות שבמידה מסוימת יש כאן איזושהי עבירה על החוקה האמריקאית שנכתבה לפני 200 שנה, וצריך לתקן את זה, אבל בפועל יש סיכוי יותר מסביר שהתכתובת הזאת היא לצורך פגיעה באזרחים אמריקאים, ולכן כן צריך לבדוק את זה. האם שכתבו את החוקה לפני 200 שנה הבינו שיש היום אויבים בתוך ארצות הברית? אני לא בטוח. איך אתם חושבים שאנחנו עצרנו את טרור הסכינאות? זה צומצם באמצעות טכנולוגיות, שאני לא ארחיב, אבל זה מפעילות כזאת. שמירה על הדמוקרטיה היא ערך בפני עצמו, וכן, יש לו מחיר. המחיר הוא כנראה פגיעה או שחיקה של ערכים אחרים. צריך לתת את הדעת על השאלה איך אתה מפקח על המפקחים. מה אותו מנגנון שיגרום למפקחים לא לנצל את המערכות האלה לרעה? האם גניבה של 1.5 מיליון מסמכים שהביכה וסיכנה את האמריקאים ואת שיטות הפעולה זה הפתרון? בנוסף הוא גם טוען שעשה את זה מסיבות פוליטיות. הוא אמר שאובמה בגד בו, ואם אובמה לא היה בוגד בו, אז הוא לא היה מפרסם את המסמכים האלה. מה שסנודן עשה הוא חמור ביותר, הוא חמור עוד יותר ממה שהוא אומר שהממשל עושה. איפה סנודן מצא את החופש שלו בסופו של יום? במדינה שפוגעת בפרטיות של אזרחיה, פוגעת בזכויות אדם באופן שיטתי, כשהחופש שלו ושל אזרחי אותה מדינה שהוא מצא במקלט מוגבלים ביותר. אני חושב שהוא עשה את מה שהוא עשה, כמו שאמרתי לבחור שצעק שמה, כי הוא רצה להיכנס לספרי ההיסטוריה בתור נושא דגל, אבל אני חושב שהוא בוגד ומגיע לו להיענש על כך. הרי אם היה פטריוט שמאמין בחוקה ומאמין במערכת המשפט האמריקאית, אז אדרבה, שיואיל להישפט ולהציג את טיעוניו בבית המשפט. ופחות מזה, אם באמת התריע בפני הממונים, האם פעל בכל הדרכים החוקיות העומדות לכל אזרח אמריקאי להתריע בשער, על פי חלק מהתחקירים שעשו רשתות הטלוויזיה בארצות הברית, כנראה שלא. למה לנו להתמם? זה שגוגל, פייסבוק, חברות הסלולר יודעים עלינו הכל, ואפילו הרבה יותר מזה, ממה שאנחנו מאפשרים להם, זה בסדר? זה לא בסדר. האם אנחנו מאפשרים את זה לפייסבוק, אז למה לא לתת את האפשרות הזאת לגורמי ביטחון שבאים לשמור עלינו, את אותם יכולות? אני מסכים שאנחנו צריכים חוקים שמאפשרים את הפעילות של גורמי הביטחון, וצריך חוקי פיקוח על המפקחים. אי אפשר שצד אחד יתקדם בטכנולוגיה, והצד השני יעמוד, יעצור. אי אפשר לעבוד ככה בצורה כזאת. מדינת ישראל מסכלת 40 פיגועים בחודש. איך עושים את זה? מה, הם קוסמים? אני לא אגיד כי אני לא סנודן, אבל הם לא קוסמים. בסופו של יום, סנודן לא הצליח לשנות משהו, כי המציאות לא מאפשרת לשנות את המציאות. בסופו של האירוע הזה, כאשר כולנו נרד למטה ונלך הביתה לישון, נרצה לדעת שיש מישהו ששומר על החירות שלנו, על החיים שלנו ועל השיטה הדמוקרטית שלנו. אני מסכים שבהחלט יש לתת את הדעת בחקיקה על איך שומרים על השומרים, ואת זה צריך לעשות. אבל אי אפשר לשפוך את התינוק עם המים, ואי אפשר להריע לאנשים שבגדו במדינה שלהם, פרסמו את שיטות הפעולה שלהם, ועל ידי כך סיכנו בעצם את כולנו שיושבים כאן. תודה רבה.